So I'm going to hit that now. So good morning. My name is Taryn Brady. I'm part of the NYACCE Board and Conference Committee. We had a blast bringing together a bunch of amazing speakers for the Making Connections conference today. Specifically, I'm glad to have you all here in the GED 101 session. Obviously, New York State has made quite the change, moving from the task to the GED high school equivalency assessment. So it's important we get to know some GED basics. While we spend the next hour and change together, feel free to utilize the chat box. Your questions will be answered by GED experts, Scott and Debbie. After the session ends, actually after 12:15, you'll probably get a survey for this session. Please fill it out. Your feedback is really important to NYACCE, and it helps us prepare for future webinars and conferences. So without further ado, I would like to hand the session over to GED's Scott Salesses.
Aaron, thank you. Let me bring up share my screen and get my PowerPoint up. Let me go into slide mode. Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to this GED 101 session, what New York State educators need to know. Happy to be with you today virtually, and maybe next year we will be together in person perhaps. Debbie, I apologize to my colleague Debbie. I wasn't sure if she was going to be part of this, so I didn't include her picture there, but you can see her there. So welcome. So I'm Scott Salesses. I'm a regional manager of state relationships with GED Testing Service, and what that means is I'm the primary point of contact for all things GED testing for 8 states across the US, and New York being one of those. I interact regularly with adult educators, test administrators, the state office, corrections, and really other stakeholders as well who are involved with GED testing. I've been with GED Testing Service since 2011, so quite a while now. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, so not too far from the state of New York. I made my first actual in-person visit, GED related, to New York back in March to attend a regional conference, and I'm sure there'll be additional visits to come and meet some of you all in person. I've talked with a ton of people over the last few months who are involved with GED testing. Let me introduce my colleague, Debbie Fawcett, as Debbie, I'm thankful, is going to help monitor the chat box today. Debbie, you want to do a quick introduction of your fabulous self? You might be frozen. I think she was frozen there. Okay, well, it's just Debbie, my colleague Debbie actually also joined GED Testing Service in 2011, and she used to be the state adult ed director for the state of Louisiana, as well as being the GED test administrator for the state of Louisiana. So she's got terrific experience that she brought to the testing service, and I've worked closely with her for many years now. And I think she had a technical issue on the session we did at 9:30, so she'll pop back in. Okay, so just a brief overview today. So I'm going to provide an update on the launch of the GED test in New York, where things stand with testing statewide. And then I'm going to go into kind of cover some of the testing basics of the GED test, some of the, the 101 type of stuff that everyone needs to know. Then we'll hop into GED Manager, talk through that. I know I've gotten a lot of questions on that, and they're good questions. We'll talk about, I want to spend some time on the GED Ready, the official practice test, because I'm definitely receiving questions on that for obvious reasons. Talk about how to purchase GED Ready if your adult ed program is looking to purchase GED Readies to provide to your students. We will, near the end, talk about tools and resources. I'm going to spend a couple minutes toward the end also talking about our GED Testing Service annual conference, which I'll provide you with some more information on towards the end. And we'll definitely have time for questions. My plan is to pause around middle of the session, take some questions, and then resume, and then take some questions again at the end. That's the plan. All right, so where are we in terms of, of course, rolling out GED testing across the state of New York? So at this point, we have about over 24,000 students who have created an account at GED.com. Of that 24 to 25,000, at this point, about 5,000 have started the testing process, meaning they've taken at least one GED test subject area. And thus far, about 450 have passed the GED test when last I checked, which was a couple of days ago. I'm just going to adjust my screen here. Okay, in terms of computer-based testing centers, we have approximately 40 computer-based testing centers throughout the state of New York. I'll go into a little more detail on the next slide on that. For correctional facilities, most correctional facilities in New York are going to be delivering on paper at this time. So some of them have already begun delivering the GED test on paper in correctional facilities. There are some correctional facilities who will be delivering on computer. We've had a few get up and running and a few more in the process. So be largely paper delivery for corrections, but there are going to be some facilities that deliver testing on computer in the correctional setting. Paper-based testing at public testing centers, non-correctional public centers, they'd be open to the public. A number of those have gone through the process to, signing the agreement, doing the training that's required before you can deliver paper-based testing. And some of those centers are going to be starting paper-based testing very soon. In terms of the focusing here on computer-based testing, again, I know because the state is trying to move primarily to computer-based testing, certainly for the public. About 24, and it's actually a slightly higher number now over the last day or so, call it 25. 25 of the high school equivalency centers in New York who have been delivering high school equivalency testing over the years, who are delivering TASC and are now delivering GED. They've moved through the process with our partners at Pearson VUE, and they are up and running with delivering GED testing on computer. There is still about approximately another 65 centers who are working through the process with our partners, Pearson VUE, in order to deliver computer-based testing. And there's a few key ones that are very close to completing. I'm well aware there are some areas of the state who lack good GED testing coverage at this point. I'm happy to say that in and around New York City, that coverage is pretty good, that we have a significant amount of centers there. There are more coming in that area. Obviously, biggest city in America needs a lot of testing centers, but we do have good coverage largely across the city, with more centers to come. Other areas of the state, it varies. Sometimes we have currently a GED testing center, other areas we don't. I am happy to say that the Buffalo area, which has been an acute pain point in terms of not having a GED testing center, is very close to having a computer-based GED testing center available in Buffalo really any day now. So I'm happy to say that. And we are continuing, we've been using some testing centers temporarily as a bridge, we'll call it. So these were existing Pearson VUE centers who were using temporarily to deliver GED testing until, what I'll call the traditional high school equivalency centers in New York get up and running. This is GED testing via computer in New York by month. So if you look there just left to right, January, of course, had almost no testing. February, a little bit of an uptick, but a significant uptick in March and April for GED testing. And I think by the time we get through May there, which is that final one, obviously we're only not even halfway through the month. I think May will exceed April in terms of the amount of testing. I know there's a lot of testing scheduled this week. I think this week will be our largest volume GED testing month in the state of New York. So things are certainly picking up as we get more testing up and running. I don't know if any of you were did a presentation a couple of months ago for the the reigns for each reign region. And, you know, we're 2.5 months past when we did that presentation, but at that time we had, you know, no New York centers up and running in terms of ones that were delivering tasks, and, you know, very little testing was happening. So it is significant improvement since then, and we're just going to see continued improvement here as more centers get up and running. Please use, in terms of resources, so I want to direct you to a couple different resources here. The NYACCE has their high school equivalency homepage, which they asked me to remind you all to please use there on the left-hand side there. I put the link in there. It's full of useful information, and I put the contact information for NYACCE there as well if you need to reach out to their office. That's the testing office. The NYACCE, some of the things that the NYACCE high school equivalency webpage includes is there's an overview of the GED testing program in New York, including computer-based testing, paper-based testing, registration and scheduling. Our director of accommodations hosted an all about testing accommodations session back in early March. That session is recorded there. There's also a Q&A that is there that we've actually updated as well after the presentation. And in addition, there's training for testing centers there among the resources on the NYACCE HSE homepage. We GED Testing Service have our GED Educators in New York homepage that you see a visual of there. We have a number of the videos that were recorded there. Those are the titles of the video. You know, there's a kind of a welcome to the 2014 GED program, which has some similarities to what I'm talking about today. And then there's some other sessions there kind of geared towards adult educators in terms of understanding the GED test and various aspects of it. So if you haven't gone there, I would recommend that you take a look at our New York educator page. I put the link in at the top there. So please utilize those resources as well. Our videos that were recorded, we tried to keep them fairly brief. So I believe they're all no more than a half hour, 30 minutes long. All right, sorry, I'm just going to take a quick look. I know I was getting a message from Debbie. Okay. Let me give, before I get into some of the GED 101 stuff, I want to give a quick update on our GED testing service diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So I won't go through everything here in detail, but one of the key things we've been doing is an ongoing series of educational workshops internally. So all employees of GED Testing Service, we've been participating in these for a couple of years now. I've myself attended a bunch. I don't even know how many in total, but I think at least 6, probably seven or eight in total. And they've been really good and engaging, and led by experts who've led the discussion presentations. We did, just two that come to mind, we've done a history of racism in the United States, which some of the information on that, of course, I'm aware of, and others was eye-opening, things I was not aware of. We did a history of racism in the educational system, which again was eye-opening in certain aspects, looking at it historically. So that's an ongoing series of workshops we're doing. We certainly continuing our efforts and doubling down on efforts around diverse leadership and representation through recruitment, hiring, and employee development. We have been developing some external partnerships. One of them we have is with a GED program in Kansas City, Kansas, and that is right. It's not the Kansas City, Missouri. It's the one in Kansas, and the launch of a GED mentoring program with a local adult education program. So I'm going to be interested to see how that goes over the coming months and years. I'd be interested to get updates on it. I'm not directly involved with it, but I know we'll get updates about how that's going. This we're really excited about. So GED Testing Service has a board of directors, and in 2021 we added 2 new board members, Kelly Blair Hart and Phyllis Kelly. Both Kelly and Phyllis have come to us from an adult education background. Kelly comes from us from adult education in the state of Virginia. She's terrific. excellent. I've been in a couple of sessions where she's been involved, and she's very engaging speaker and has great experience. Of course, she's a teacher in the classroom currently. Phyllis comes to us from Central Alabama Community College, where she is the director of adult learning. Both of these women, I'm thrilled. I think we're all thrilled at GED Testing Service to have them on our board. They're going to bring great insight to our board. Our board did not have somebody from, specifically members from the adult education community on it before we added Kelly and Phyllis. So it's really, I think, something that was lacking, and we've certainly filled it with these two women are excellent. And if any of you, I'll talk about our conference, GED annual conference at the end, but I think both will be at our conference, I believe, and it'd be great to meet them if any of you are able to attend, and I'll talk about that a little more at the end of this session. Okay, so I want to do a quick overview of the GED test. Just want to make sure everyone has this information, just some of the core, 101, things that every educator should know. 4 parts to the GED test. So again, we haven't eliminated anything. I know TASC had 5 parts, and we used to have 5 parts. We simply combined reading and writing into reasoning through language arts, given that reading and writing are so closely linked. So reasoning through language arts, that is the longest subject area at 150 minutes. Students are able to take a 10-minute break during that, because we know it is a long time to sit for a subject. There is 45 minutes for the extended response, or I know some people still refer to it as the essay. We use the term extended response, and that falls right in the middle. So essentially, reasoning through language arts is broken up into 3 sections, with the middle section being the extended response. We didn't want to start students with the extended response. We didn't want to have them end with it. We thought the middle section was the appropriate section. Mathematical reasoning is 115 minutes. So that's the second longest. For part 1 of math, the calculator is not allowed. Part 1 is pretty brief. It's approximately 5 questions at the beginning, no calculator allowed. For part 2, once they get through that part 1, then they can use the calculator for the remainder of the math test. And the calculator is that one you're all familiar with. It's the Texas Instruments 30XS multi-view calculator. Science comes in at, social studies comes in at 70 minutes, and science comes in at 90 minutes. Students, I just want to add, students, of course, can take 1 subject at a time. So most of our students are taking 1 subject, maybe 2 subjects at a time. But a lot of students we see like to take 1 subject at a time. They'll say, okay, I'm prepared. I feel ready to take the science test. I'm going to take the science test. I'm hopefully going to pass. And then next week or 2 weeks or whenever I'm ready, feel prepared to take the next subject area, I'm going to schedule that. So students really like the ability to schedule 1 section at a time, maybe 2 sections at a time. Of course, we have students who want to take all 4 parts in the same day, and we don't advise it, but we can't stop them if the testing center has the available time for them to do that. But really, most students are taking 1 subject at a time. The score scale. So the score range for the GED test is 100 to 200 on each subject area. So 200 would be a perfect score on a subject area. The minimum score to achieve passing is 145 per subject. So simple. There's no, getting, I know on the old GED test, of course, you could get, you had to get an average score across the 5 subject areas. So you could kind of get a lower score in one and make it up in the other. It was somewhat confusing to students. So none of that. It's 145 per subject to pass in order to earn your credential from the state of New York. In addition to the passing level, the high school equivalency passing level, which is of course the main objective of the GED test, we are measuring college and career readiness skills as well, higher level skills that we were not measuring on the previous tests. So we have the additional performance levels. We have the GED college ready level, which is a score of 165 or higher in a subject. And the highest level is our GED Ready Plus credit, which is 175 or higher. I will talk a little bit more on the next couple of slides about what those higher performance levels mean in terms of some recommendations to colleges. The GED test was standardized and normed on a national sample of high school students back in the summer of 2013. And I know for a fact that there were New York students who were part of that national sample. I've gotten this question a few times about the cost to the student for the GED test in New York remains $0. So students pay nothing for the test, whether the first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, it's $0 for the test, just like it was with TASC. It's available in English and Spanish, and there are a wide array of accommodations available. I mean, really, I think the easiest way for me to say this is if a student has a diagnosed disability, we will have a accommodation to meet their needs. The most common accommodations that we see are extended time and additional breaks. I believe that comprises about 75 to 80% of the accommodations, but certainly there are others where maybe a reader recorder is needed, private room, maybe something with a screen reader, JAWS. So really there's almost an endless amount of potential accommodations. I put the link in there to our GED testing service accommodations information page, which is replete with terrific information about the accommodations process, as well as forms that will be needed in order to show a documented disability. And again, I would refer you back to the accommodations webinar that we hosted back in early March that is on the NYACCE page. And there's also a long question and answer document as well. The higher level performance levels here. So obviously 145 passing, that's to earn your high school credential from the state of New York. Some students are getting to that 165 or higher level, the GED College Ready or the GED College Ready plus credit. And I put a link in there if you want to go into a little bit more detail on those. But really what this is showing is that students getting that 165 or higher are clearly demonstrating that they are ready to do college level work. And as a result of that, we have two recommendations to colleges for students who would be enrolling in a college who have earned these college ready scores on the GED test. So the recommendations come from the American Council on Education Credit Recommendation Service. The American Council on Education Credit Recommendation Service does these type of recommendations for many testing organizations across the country. They've been around for what, 40, 50 years doing these type of recommendations. Colleges are familiar with the American Council on Education Credit Recommendations. The American Council on Education, ACE for short, they did a review of the GED test several years back, and they made two recommendations to colleges. The first is the GED College Ready level, which is a score of 165 or higher per subject area. The recommendation to colleges, and the key here is colleges have to implement this, is a student achieving a score of 165 or higher on the GED test in terms of a specific subject area. They enroll in college. If the college accepts the recommendation, student would be waived from placement testing and be placed directly into credit-bearing college classes. We are very confident that somebody at 165 or higher is ready to do college-level work. A lot of colleges across the U.S. have implemented this college ready recommendation. Across the U.S., a good amount of states, sometimes the entire state system has implemented it. Other times it's more one by one. But there are, I don't even have an exact number at this point, but there's hundreds of colleges across the U.S. who have implemented the GED College Ready recommendation. And I'm sure some colleges in New York will over time. The second recommendation we call our GED College Ready plus credit. This is 175 or higher. It's a very high level. I mean, not many people are getting to that 175 or higher in a subject area, but some are, a small percentage are. And the recommendation there to colleges is that somebody getting a 175 or higher could actually be awarded college credit, credit for prior learning, think of it. The best analogy I have probably for this one is think of somebody in a high school class taking an AP class and earning college credit for that. This 175 or higher really is at the highest level. This one has been a little bit more of a difficult implementation for colleges. Oftentimes they say, well, let's implement the college ready one. We'll come back and look at this credit one. Credit gets a little trickier. I understand. Some colleges have implemented this though, and not a large amount, but I definitely have some that have implemented this and have given me some feedback on how they're awarding the credit hours as well, if anyone's interested in hearing that from some colleges in other states. So just want to make you aware of that. Okay, let's talk GED Manager. This is our system that is how adult educators and others can access student information in a nutshell. I'm guessing some of you on this session either have access to GED Manager or somebody, a colleague of yours, has access to GED Manager, or maybe you think you need access to GED Manager. I'll talk about that as well. So GED Manager is our database of GED test student information for, in your case, New York test takers. Of course, it's divided by state, so you would have access, of course, to just New York test takers. So there's different roles within GED Manager. There's a role for test administrators. They have a specific type of access, and we've worked very closely with the state office on this to determine who should have access to what data. Of course, there's privacy laws and information here, so we can't just allow anyone to have access. ASAP, the coordinators, they have a specific type of access. Corrections has a specific type of access, and GED, your adult educators, you have a specific type of access called student authorized view. And I guess I'm assuming most people on this call are involved on the educational side. Common capability, while the types of access do vary, there are common capabilities across the four roles. So looking up students, a student test activity report, running a passers report to see who's passed in your program, and that'll be a growing list. And also seeing student scores for the GED Ready practice test and the GED operational test. Different GED Manager roles. So adult educators have what is called a student authorized view role. That's the role that you have in GED Manager. This allows you to see view scores and score reports of students who agree to share their scores with your program. So that is the key. You can't see everyone, but you can see scores of your students who share them with your program. And I'll talk more about that and making sure you're getting students in the habit of sharing their scores with you so you can see their scores in their score report in order to help them, of course. You'll also be able to see a list of students who are interested in attending your program. In other words, who aren't currently in your program, but may be interested in enrolling, and another way to recruit students into your program. You'll be able to run reporting for students, and you'll also be able to purchase GED Ready tests via GED Manager, which I'm going to talk more about when I get to that section about how to purchase GED Ready. Okay, so test administrators, they're going to have a different role than adult educators and the ASAP coordinators. So I've noticed over the past few months, some of you are program coordinators where you're involved with the testing side and the adult education side. So that's fine. We have a solution for you. In that case, you will likely have two different roles within GED Manager. You'll have that student authorized view, the adult education role, and then you'll also have the role that's assigned to test administrators. And you'll simply, via GED Manager, be able to toggle between those two roles. I like saying the word toggle between those two roles quite easily. I put a slide in here. Some of you have access to GED Manager. If you do end up with two different types of access, you'll simply have in the upper right-hand corner there, you'll have a default account, and then you will have your other type of access you have. And you would just toggle back and forth between those two. So if you were, let's just say the student authorized view was your default account, when you needed to go to kind of the test center view, you would simply click on the other type of access there that would be listed as, I think it's called jurisdiction view only, or whatever it said. It might say your sub account, actually, I think is what it says. So you'd simply go back and forth between the default account and the sub account. It's quite easy. I have a number of people who are utilizing it, and they're having really no issues from what I've heard. Okay, let's dig into GED Prep Connect, which is a part of GED Manager. So GED Prep Connect was designed years ago as a way to direct more students to adult education. Really, the genesis of it was back in 2015, I believe it was, soon after the launch in 2014 of the new GED testing program. Adult educators gave us good feedback in saying, you're not highlighting enough when students are registering on GED.com about adult education classes. And we said it, we agreed. And we worked with adult educators, a group of them across the US, to develop how can we better promote and make students aware of adult education classes in their local area. So GED Prep Connect is simply, it's a part of GED Manager, and it's also a part of the GED.com student experience, which I'll show here in a minute. But it has a number of different of practical uses. One of them is it's a way to recruit new students into your program. Another way is for your existing students, it's a way for them to share their scores with you so you can monitor their progress. You can see their scores and you can view their score reports, which show areas for improvement. You'll also be able to identify graduates, and this relatively new feature of being able to purchase GED Readies and manage the use of the GED Readies through GED Manager. Okay, so on the student side, when they're signing up at GED.com, they early on in the GED.com registration flow, they will come to the screen that you see here. And it's telling them about how adult education can help them and their journey to pass the GED test. And it asks them, are you interested in attending GED classes? And it's a yes, no. So some students are going to click no, and we can't force them to do this. So they'll just move on. But a lot of students will say yes. So if you're working with some of your students now who are already in your program, and let's say you're working with them to create a GED.com account, they should answer yes to this question, and then they will click continue. There's also going to be students who aren't in your program currently who will see this and they'll click yes. And then on this screen, they will see a list of centers, adult education centers closest to them, and they can click select. So by clicking select, it does a couple of things. For students in your program, once they choose your center, they're then sharing their scores with your program. For students who are not in your program currently, they're clicking select. They're essentially expressing interest in your program. Maybe they are interested in attending your program, and maybe a good way to recruit new students. I mean, programs across the country are successfully recruiting new students into their program who need adult education classes via this tool. Going back here to GED Manager. So those of you who have access to GED Manager, your colleagues, this is a screen in GED Manager. You'll manage things through this Manage GED Prep Connect Enrollment, which is under Manage Student. So the adult ed enrollment process. So whenever somebody clicks that select button, which I just showed on that two slides prior, they show up as interested first, meaning they're interested in your program. So this is where if they're enrolled in your program, you want to change their status from interested to enrolled, and you will do that via that Manage GED Prep Connect Enrollment section of GED Manager. There are other statuses as well that you can change it to. In other words, you will have a list of students who have expressed interest in your program. Let's say there's a number of students who are not currently in your program, and you say, okay, somebody on our staff is going to reach out to these students to make contact with them to see if they're, interested in coming to our program. Are they coming in maybe for an orientation, having a conversation, whatever it is? You could change their status from interested to contacted, so you know that they've been contacted. If a student said, no, I chose your program, but I'm not going to enroll, you could change them to dismiss. So you wouldn't have to, they'd be out of your list, so to speak. If somebody credentials, you could change them as credentialed. So now their status is credentialed. They're no longer really an active student. It's very easy to change these statuses. So you can see there, this is in that GED Manage GED Prep Connect Enrollment page. You'll see the student name there, the student information, and simply on the right-hand side there under action, that is where you can change, you can edit from, say, interested to enrolled or interested to contacted or whatever it is. It really is quite easy to use. And this is just another screenshot of kind of a close-up of the changing the enrollment status. And there's also a section there for putting in notes as well, which I think are handy, depending on each situation, to put in a couple of notes there. Your colleague, if multiple of you have access to the system, you'd be able to see your colleagues' notes. Okay, the home page here, this is where a box on the left, it says expressed interest. That is where you'll see students who have expressed interest in your program. I don't think you're going to see a number that large, but you will see students expressed interest, and that number there can be brought up as a list. In other words, you can bring up a list of who are these people who have expressed interest. Maybe some of them, of course, are your own students who are you want to change their status to enrolled. Others maybe are just students in the local community who are looking for an adult education center. On the homepage of GED Manager, there are a lot of helpful documents there under the aptly named helpful documents section. There's really good resources there that I would direct you to in terms of how to manage do the student search, manage enrollments. Going into more depth than I'm going to have time to go into on this presentation. Click on those. I would highly recommend you take some time. I don't know if you want to print them out or just have the documents. Take a look at those documents. They really give excellent details on how to manage all the various aspects of GED Manager / GED Prep Connect. In terms of just some of the GED Manager menu, there's the student search where you could look up an individual student test activity report. That's a useful report. The Managed GED Prep Connect enrollment and the passwords report. Those are kind of the key menu of things that you can do. Requesting, if you don't have access to GED Manager currently, you think you should, or if you think a colleague should. I put the link in there at the top there. That is a link to our GED Manager page. And on that GED Manager page is a link to request access. There's a quick form you'd need to fill out to request access. The NYACCE State Office has to review and approve all access. So it's not something GED Testing Service can just say, oh, sure, and your colleague can have access. Definitely, they have to be approved by the NYACCE office. Once the NYACCE office reviews, and assuming they approve, they let us know, and we will set up the person's GED Testing Service, the GED Manager account in quick order, and you'll receive an email with information about logging into GED Manager. So that's how that works. Additional ways, I just want to cover this fairly briefly here. I'm just doing a quick time check. Okay, we're good. So I know I said at the beginning, when students are first creating their account, they can select to try to train them to select your testing center. If they don't, in other words, maybe they've already created their GED.com account, and at the beginning they did not select your testing center, there's plenty of ways for them to go back in and do that. So this is just a screenshot of a student's GED.com account. If they go into that Find GED Classes link there, under Study, they could select your center that way. They can select it via that icon there on their score page. You see that icon circled in red there? That is an icon. If they click on it, it'll bring up that map of of adult education centers, and they could select your center that way. So that's under their score page. On the home page, on the dashboard, as we call it, there's a Find Local Classes there. They can click there. It's just on their home page if you scroll down a little bit. And also under Edit Profile. Under their Edit Profile, which is in the upper right-hand corner of their GED.com account, they can go to Edit Profile and then Edit Prep Center Selection. And they could do it there if they hadn't selected a prep center at that point. So there's many ways to do it. Select a prep center if they don't select it on that initial screen of GED.com registration. Okay, before I get into the practice test, why don't I take this opportunity just to do a quick pause here for questions? Probably I'd like to do just a few minutes, and then I'll make sure I leave time at the end for questions. So let me I can bring up the chat.
Scott, you do have some. I was able to get back in, and Taryn and I have been working.
Okay.
Some I've tried to answer quickly, but again, we have a question about, and I believe I've answered this, when you were talking about the College Ready and College Ready Plus credit, wanting to know if there was a list. We do have a list. I responded that there is a list, and they can email you, and we can talk about that. In that same vein, there was a question about, is our College Ready Plus credit similar to CLEP courses, that people would want? And it is all done under the evaluation by the American Council on Education's unit. So it is aligned with the same sort of process. And that was one question. We will have this PowerPoint available. There was a question about, do we know of anyone who allows the passing the GED in Spanish to provide foreign language credit? I am not aware of that. And
yeah, I don't have anything to add to that one either.
Jennifer made a comment about the semantics of the titles that we use in GED Prep Connect, based on how they were guided in their programs, that if you list somebody as enrolled, then they're yours, and they are yours to see through. Your expectation is that they become. So you might want to go back, and that is something that she could certainly have a discussion with you about the semantics of what that means in their world, and if there needs to be an edit or a change in what we call enrolled that causes them a pain point. Okay. And we did get a question about, students are always looking for the best book to buy, and did we have any recommendations? And if you'd like to answer that, or I'm happy to, either way.
Yeah, I guess we're Switzerland to a certain degree, in that we're not going to say, well, go to this publisher over that publisher. But the good news is we do have our publishing partners, as we call them, and these publishing partners, in order to be called a publishing partner, publishers have to have their GED prep materials reviewed by a third-party organization to make sure they're fully aligned with the GED test. So we have a link on our website to our publishing partners. And I mean, ultimately, it's going to be up to you in terms of which publisher you want to go with. I mean, they publish print materials, they publish online resources as well, certainly. But we do have a list of those publishing partners who, their material has been vetted, and you can rest assured their material is fully aligned. And after that, it's up to you to determine, which material would best suit your classroom and your students.
And Scott, the only other thing that I see that might be a clarification, when you were talking about the approval for GED Manager, someone wrote in, is that approved by AEPP office or the HSE office for GED Manager access?
Yeah, that would be the HSE office, which is headed up by Ruth Singer. Many of you may know Ruth. She heads up the HSE/GED office with NYSE, and that's where the GED Manager approvals flow through.
And there is some chatter that perhaps we can work with Jennifer and others who are conversing. It raised some concern among others about the fact that, they wanted to know, is that in writing that they're enrolled and accountable for them? And Jennifer did respond, no, I haven't seen it in writing, but it is in telephone conversation. So might be something that they all can follow up on at a later time. So.
Yeah, correct. Yes, I would agree. Maybe there's some further conversations with the HSE office and maybe the adult education office as well, in terms of the Prep Connect
and the meaning and the clarification on it. Right. I think that's everything that's been asked or responded to so far.
Okay. Well, we have, what do we have? We have a half hour left, so let's resume. Okay, GED Ready, the official practice test. There we go. Okay, GED ready. First and foremost, it is highly predictive of the student performance on the GED test. So the questions, the question types on the GED ready are the same types of questions students are going to encounter on the GED test. You know, it's not the same exact questions, but it is absolutely the same types of questions they will see on the GED test. It was the same type of norming and standardization was done for the official test, was also done for the GED ready. They are very, very closely aligned. As I said there off the top of the slide, it's highly predictive of student performance on the GED test. There are, students are going to get a score, and they're also going to be placed into a performance zone. It's going to be either not likely to pass, too close to call, or likely to pass. If somebody scores on the, let's just say the GED ready math test and let's just say they score a 132 and they're not likely to pass. If they just went in and took the GED test, it is highly unlikely they are going to pass the GED math test. On the flip side, on the positive side, if they get a 145 or higher on the GED ready math test, it is a strong probability they will go in and pass the GED math test. I mean, nothing's 100%, of course, there's no way to, but certainly there is a high level of correlation, and it's highly predictive. Students also get a detailed score report, which should be quite useful to you as educators. It's going to show on that GED ready the skills that they need to improve. For the GED ready, each subject is half the length of the actual GED test. Those are the three zones that I just mentioned. So students will get a score, and that zone and the score correlates to one of those three zones. Here's a visual of the score report. So you see at the top there, the student score, they are likely to pass. The middle section is where they can actually select their study material they're using from a drop-down list. So this is where I like to say kind of the magic happens. So let's just say you were using a particular textbook in this case. If that textbook is listed there under link to your study material, they could select that textbook. And on the bottom there, on the skills to improve, it's actually going to give them specific pages to go to in order to improve that skill. And there's also, in terms of the link to the study material, you can also link if you're using, I mean, a lot of programs now are using online material, resources that publishers provide that's, online study. That will work as well as the skills to improve. It'll just direct them to, a certain lesson or something related to that. So this score report really is night and day compared to our score report from the old GED test. Just had a score. There was nothing else. Now we have a score, and of course that crucial information of what skills are needed to improve that score in order to get to that passing level, or maybe to get to that college ready level. How do programs purchase GED ready tests? So this question's coming up more and more, rightly so. I know some of you may have been using tasks, some of the task readiness tests that you had left over for a while through the first few months, maybe first half of the year. But I think more questions have been coming up about, transitioning to the GED ready test, where a program's looking to purchase GED readies to provide to their students. So I'll go over the preferred method. Option one, this is the preferred method. You can purchase now through GED Manager. So anyone who has access to GED Manager should have the ability to purchase GED readies via GED Manager. This really is the most convenient way for programs to purchase and probably more importantly, manage the GED ready test that you'll assign to your students. If you purchase this way, there's no voucher numbers to keep track of. There's no expiration dates. It's very easy to assign and track the GED readies that you purchase. We have bulk pricing available. It's listed in GED Manager what the bulk pricing is. I mean, it's just, the larger amount you purchase, it's a lower price point. They can be purchased. You can make purchases via credit card, but we recently added the ability to pay via check or electronic funds. So for instance, if you want to pay via check, you would place your order, you would receive an invoice, a bill essentially, and then you would need to submit payment for that. So let's say you submitted it to your your office that handles that, your finance office, accounting office, they would need to issue a check to us for payment. Once we receive that, you'll immediately have your GED readies. Obviously, credit card is probably the easiest, and I know some programs do have access to maybe a program credit card, but not all do, certainly. So, but you can pay via check now. So I'm hoping that opens this up to a larger amount of programs being able to pay now that you can pay via a check process. This is a screenshot of the GED Manager homepage, and you see there where it says Buy GED Readies. That's where you would start this process. Let's say you bought 10. You want to start small. You want to buy 10 to start. Once you have purchased them, you see there you have 10 unassigned GED Readies. That middle button there is where you could click Manage GED Readies, where you could assign them to a student. And you see there, it says Assign GED Readies. So if you click that Manage button, I believe it'll bring you to this screen where you could assign it. So you would simply look up the student information and put in their last name, first name, and then you would assign them a GED Ready. It's really easy to do. Once you assign that GED Ready to a student, let's say I'm your student, you assigned it to me. Now you have 9 unassigned GED Readies and 1 assigned. So very easy to track the ones you have assigned. The student, this is the student view. So when you assign a GED Ready to your student, when they log into their GED.com account, you'll see there where the red arrow is. They now have a GED Ready practice test waiting for them. All they need to do is click on that Access button, and that will take them through the steps to start their GED Ready. It's really should be a seamless process. This, in terms of managing them, very easy to do, easier than vouchers, which I will talk about here in a minute. The screen, I realize this is a little bit small, but for the ones you've assigned, you'd be able to just click on those ones you've assigned and see, okay, who have I assigned them to? Have they taken the GED Ready yet? Let's say a student dropped out of your program or some other reason why you wanted to unassign a GED Ready that you previously assigned. You can easily do so by just simply unassigning it. As long as the GED Ready hasn't been taken, of course, you could simply unassign it and then assign it to a different student. You can share the GED Readies you purchased with a colleague of yours. They have to have, your colleague has to have access to GED Manager. But let's say there's several of you who have access to GED Manager. One of you makes the purchase of GED Readies. You can then share them with your colleagues very easily by this shared GED Readies. Then you all have access to the pool of GED Ready tests you purchased. We have an FAQ here. I put in the link there about purchasing this way. It's a really pretty robust FAQ. I have talked with adult educators. I was at we've had this option for about a year now. Adult education programs who I interact with, who I know formerly were using vouchers, have switched to this purchasing GED Readies through GED Manager, have really given it rave reviews. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. They've come to me and said it is night and day in terms of being much, much easier to manage and assign GED Readies. I was at the COABE conference in March up in Seattle, and I had a program in Oregon come up to me and were like, this is so much better than the old way of assigning vouchers. So it really has gotten strong reviews from people who are utilizing it. So I really would recommend you look at this option if you're looking to purchase GED Readies to give to your students. Option 2, you can purchase GED Ready vouchers from one of our publishing partners who are selling these GED Ready vouchers on our behalf. And I put the link in there to see which publishers. That takes us to that publisher page that I mentioned earlier when we answered a few questions. That'll show you our publishing partners and which one of those sell the GED Ready vouchers on our behalf. So you can purchase GED Ready vouchers from one of the publishers. They will have bulk pricing as well. Just so you know, if you purchase vouchers, let's just say you purchased 1,000 GED Ready vouchers. You're going to get essentially a spreadsheet with 1,000 numbers of GED Ready vouchers. And for those, you would simply take a GED Ready voucher number, you would give it to your student, and when your student's going into their GED.com account, they'll have to enter that voucher number for GED Ready when they're purchasing it. They expire 18 months from purchase, but we are happy to extend expiration dates, or we can issue replacements for unused. So we don't want anyone to lose money on this. So you can purchase this way. I guess the downsides are it's definitely a little bit more, it's definitely a little more than a little more involved keeping track of these. I mean, you're going to need to keep track of who you've assigned them to, have they been utilized, keeping an eye on the expiration dates. So all of those things, I mean, they can be a little bit of time-consuming tasks that can be eliminated if you purchase via GED Manager. Option 3, I'm going to mention this because I've been asked a question a number of times about a paper-based GED Ready. We are trying to limit the paper-based GED Ready to correctional facilities who are delivering GED testing via paper. Some public centers are going to be offering paper-based testing. I'm going to highly recommend that you still use the computer-based GED Ready. The paper-based version does not have all of the features of the computer-based GED Ready. For instance, it lacks that detailed score report, which I think is quite important. It also needs to be hand scored by the instructor. I'll leave it at this. If you're a public testing center and you feel like you have to have paper-based GED Ready, contact me and we'll talk more about it and can probably work something out. But I really would urge to use the computer-based GED Ready. Okay, important tools for the classroom. The performance level descriptors. So just briefly what these are, I want to leave time for a Q&A, and I still have a number of things here I just want to talk about on this section. Our assessment team who develops the test has described these as the blueprint for the test. So really they show the skills that are demonstrated at each level. So I'd really highly recommend you taking a look at this. So just a brief example. Let's say you have a student who's kind of below passing level at this point. These performance level descriptors, there's one that would show you, these are the skills that are typically demonstrated by somebody who's not yet at a passing level by subject area. Then you could look at the performance level descriptors, the skills that someone typically at the high school equivalency level is proficient at, and say, okay, what are the key skills we need to focus on to get my student in math from below passing to become proficient in enough of these skills that they can demonstrate high school equivalency. High impact indicators. These are, I like to refer them as getting a lot of bang for your buck on particular skills. So these are key skills that are used not just in one subject area, but they're interconnected across the 4 subject areas. And if students can become proficient in these skills, it is going to help them not only on math, for instance, but it's actually going to help them across the subject areas, all 4 of them. So I would definitely recommend you take a look at these high impact indicators that you can see a visual there of the document there. Excuse me, maybe print that out. And we've also done, Debbie and others have led sessions specifically on the performance level indicators and the high impact indicators. GED.com homepage. So everything flows through GED.com. It's where students go to set up their account. Educators and administrators, you want to go to that upper right-hand corner where it says educators and administrators. That's where all of the resources are for you all. So you'll see here, this is on that educator and administrator page. One of the key ones I would recommend you go to is that teaching the GED test page. That really is chock full of great information and resources. Some of the resources I want to highlight to you right here, the computer-based test tutorial. I think we think as an organization, everyone who takes the GED test should do this computer-based test tutorial before taking it. It's available in English and Spanish. And what it does is it shows the student exactly what the test interface is going to look like. We don't want them surprised on test day by something they're not expecting. We want them to be familiar with what to expect so they can focus on test day on getting as many questions right as possible. So I highly recommend you utilizing this with your student, be a part of their test preparation. Calculator tutorial we have there as well. Any educator who I talk with tells me that proficiency with the calculator is critical in terms of success on the math test. The calculator can also be used on the science and social studies test. There may be questions on science and social studies where a calculator would be useful. We have the free practice test, which is a good resource, another tool in the toolbox, as we like to say. It's 10 questions per subject area. So I'd recommend using that as well as the student study guides. There's a study guide for each subject, has key information about each subject, sample questions. The study guides are excellent for your students. They're also good for you all as you're getting used to the GED test, and especially in new teachers as you all are growing more accustomed to it. If you have new teachers coming into your program, which I know you will, those study guides are an excellent resource for new teachers as well to get some of the key information on each subject. So students have access to this through their GED.com accounts, but you all have access to these through GED.com, the educator and administrator page. Tuesdays for Teachers. This is our, I'd like to say, it's basically award-winning webinar series that we've been doing for a number of years now for teachers. They are professional development sessions for teachers. My colleague who's with us, Debbie Fawcett, is one of the leaders who host these sessions on a monthly basis. We get typically 300 to 500 educators attending live, but we record these sessions and we make them available soon after. The recording is available, the PowerPoint and any other material that went with them. So we have our archive here of Tuesdays for Teachers webinar archive, which I'd highly recommend you take a look at and see if there are sessions there that you might like to go back to, and if you listen to it, or maybe you just want to look at the PowerPoint. But there really are valuable sessions there to take a look at. Our in-session newsletter. This is our once per month newsletter for the GED community. I say to anyone, if you're involved with GED preparation, testing, or GED in any way, sign up for the newsletter. It's sent out once per month. We're not going to send you a million emails about it. Once per month newsletter. We try to make it quite relevant in terms of the information we're providing there. You can sign up for the newsletter via that GED.com educator administrator page. Our webinars, the Tuesdays for Teachers webinars, I hope some of you will be able to participate in them live in the future. If you're signed up for a session, you'll get information about the Tuesdays for Teachers webinars. Many of the archive we have on our website, and then the remainder, these go back years, so we have on our Tuesdays for Teachers YouTube page. A few other student resources I want to mention briefly here. We're good. We have 13 minutes left. I can wrap this up and we'll have time for questions and answers. Aztec Software is one publisher I want to highlight because we have co-produced a couple of products with Aztec Software. I do want to highlight them briefly here. So Aztec Software is we have an official partnership in terms of Spanish materials for Aztec Software. They've been a great partner to work with, and they have terrific materials for GED preparation materials for the GED Spanish test. They're our preferred partner for GED Spanish test prep materials. Also, GED Flash. What GED Flash is, it's a co-produced product between us and Aztec. One of the things that GED Testing Service heard from students overwhelmingly was, we want more practice test questions. The GED Ready is great, but we want more than that. We want more questions before we get to the GED Ready. So that's what the GED Flash is. It is literally thousands of practice test questions, just like similar to the ones students will see on the GED test, that students can take advantage of via this GED Flash. Adult ed organizations can purchase GED Flash for organizations. So you'd work with Aztec Software on that if you're interested in learning more about GED Flash or purchasing it. You would utilize it through the Aztec Software. There are more than 6,000 practice test questions. So it's about 1,500 questions per subject area. There are a lot of practice test questions. There is also instant feedback with answer explanation. And also educators have access to back-end reporting on this through the Aztec Software, which would be quite valuable to you all. And just briefly, I will say our assessment team actually did some analysis of students who are using GED Flash. And we're happy to say it is working as designed. In other words, students who are utilizing it are doing well on the GED Ready test and the GED test itself. So you can see there just briefly on this slide, those that were kind of low users who were using GED Flash, but not that much. And then there were the high users. And you can see there the mean test scores. So the good news is that even those who are using GED Flash kind of on a low end, we're still having an average passing score on the Ready test and the actual test. But you can see that those who are high users, regular users of these GED Flash, they were scoring 4 to 6 points higher, depending on whether it was the Ready or the GED test. So certainly the efficacy is good on this, that the product is working in terms of students, or it's helping students feel more confident and pass the GED test. If you're interested in more information, you can always ask me. I can direct you to Aztec, but I put in Rafa Diaz as the representative from Aztec Software who's working with the state of New York. If you'd like more information about Spanish materials that Aztec has for GED preparation or GED Flash, please reach out to Rafa, and I put his email address in there. Wrapping it up here with our conference, we're happy to say we've had a GED testing service annual conference for many years now. But really in the last 5 years or so, we've shifted the focus to it's largely for adult educators now. We are returning to an in-person conference after not having it for the last couple of years. We will be in person in Atlanta, Georgia, July 13th to the 15th. There is a link there which has much more information about the registering for the conference. I would highly recommend, I've already talked with a few people in New York who are going to attend our conference. Given that the GED program is new for New York, for educators, if you're able to, I know some of you are not able to travel out of state, but some of you are, because I know some of you are attending. If you are, I would highly recommend. I think this would be well worth your time and investment to attend this. Just a little variety highlights there. We will have a wide variety of professional development sessions that my colleague Debbie Fawcett is leading, along with several other experts, instructors. Just some of them there to mention. We'll have some subjects on helping students overcome math challenges, taking the angst out of reasoning through language arts, as well as PD sessions around science and social studies. In addition, we'll have a corrections focused track. We'll have more in-depth sessions on GED Manager, GED Prep Connect, full sessions on that. We have some workforce sessions. You'd be able to interact with educators from across the US, as well as a wide variety of GED testing service staff, including myself and Debbie, but really lots of other colleagues as well from really almost every department of GED testing service. Our leadership will be there. So, and we also have a students award luncheon where we grant some scholarships to local students who will be this year from Georgia, which is always typically the highlight of the conference. Okay, there's my information. Let's go back to questions. I'll leave that up there and I can bring up the questions there. Debbie, if you're still out there, are there?
I am.
Anything, any questions you want to highlight, if I could ask you that?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that came up, and you may be able to talk with them directly. Some questions, when you're talking about GED Direct, the comment that you pay by check, and we probably need to define that, because they said that's a problem in some business offices because they can't allow them to cut a check until the product is delivered. And to that end, I'd say check with you, because you can work with our business people to find out the method of payment that would work if they're interested in it. And another question that is out of my pay grade here, because I don't pay with it that closely. Question was, if they pay by a credit card, is tax included? I don't think I see that on most of my things, but nonetheless. Yeah.
I believe tax is included. I'm fairly certain of that answer, that there will be tax that we have to, yes, charge appropriate tax on it.
Yeah. Okay. And the others, I think we fairly well hit. Status to contacted until I'm ready to refer. They're going back and forth over how they would use the Prep Connect contacts and enrolled and so forth. So yeah, that's something
Okay.
that they can certainly take up with you at another point.
Yeah,
And
yes, indeed.
if I've missed something, this would be the time if they would want to unmute and ask you directly, Scott. So I'm gonna kind of stand
Okay.
down and hide in the weeds here.
Yeah, if anyone wants to, I think you were able to take yourself off mute. If there's anything you want to ask, or if there's any additional questions you want to put in the chat box. Many of you have my contact information, but if you don't, pretty straightforward email address, other than my last name, of course. Okay.
I see Taryn's giving everyone the heads up there, Scott. So
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I thank everyone for coming and look forward to future conversations with you. And Taryn, I'll toss it over to you for any last remarks. Anything?
Just what I put in the chat box. Thank you and Debbie so much for giving your expertise on this subject as New York State gets used to the GED again. For everybody else who has to leave the session now, please come back for our lunch and learn. We will be giving out raffle prizes. And we obviously want you to come back to our sessions this afternoon. Don't forget to fill out that survey when it generates. It should pop up around 12:15, 12:16. So we appreciate your feedback there. There will be a recording. I saw that question again. The conference committee is debating where to put it, but we could probably send an email out to everybody letting you know where it is. We're thinking maybe our YouTube channel, and there might be a link on our NYACCE website. So just stay tuned. We will let you know. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, Taryn.